Well, welcome back. Continuing our discussion of how World War II affected the black community in the United States and really laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement. We've looked so far at how the ideology of white supremacy was undermined by World War II. And we've also looked at the role that black veterans had and why it was that World War II so affected them and had them coming back to the United States at the close of the war, unwilling to accept the same lack of rights that had existed prior to the war. I'm now going to speak about black workers during the war years. During the war years, during World War II years, just as in World War I years, masses of black people migrated from the South to the North, and I'll give you statistics on that. But the important thing is this, is that the World War II years really opened up job opportunities to black people that hitherto they had not had, that up to that time they had not had. Not without struggle. Not without struggle. World War II, like World War I, helped bring or brought the nation out of a depression. When World War II opened in Europe in 1939, September of 1939, the United States was still in the Depression, the Great Depression. But with the opening of the war in September of 1939 came the great demand for everything American industry could produce. World War II created a necessary demand on U.S. industry from the side that the United States from the start openly supported. That was the side of the British and the French. And President Roosevelt openly stated that he was going to make the United States the arsenal, the arms maker of democracy, the arsenal of democracy. And so, especially war industries picked up so soon as the war began in Europe in September of 1939. Unfortunately, the war industries, as of 1939 and 1940, opened principally to white people. The best jobs, the highest paying jobs, the jobs demanding the most skill, learning the most skills, they were reserved for white people. And black people's condition in the early going in World War II, in the World War II years, early position in employment in these industries probably remained pretty much sweeping the floor. The leader of the largest black union of the time, a man whose name I've already mentioned, A. Philip Randolph, looked at this situation and said, this is not going to do. And A. Philip Randolph demanded that those industries doing government contract work, that is to say, being paid by the government to do work, to build arms, to make arms for the U.S. government, that by virtue of the fact that the U.S. government was hiring these industries to do work, allowed the United States government to make the demand on these industries that they hire people in a non-discriminatory fashion. So he put forward this demand, and of course nothing happened. And then A. Philip Randolph called for a march on Washington. 1941, June, scheduled for June of 1941, a march of 100,000 black people to Washington, D.C. And when he announced this march, and here we've got a flyer. When he announced this march, Franklin Roosevelt, who was President of the United States at the time, panicked. Because the last thing that Roosevelt wanted to see in June of 1941, the United States was not yet at war formally, but it was clearly on the side of the British and the French. The last thing the United States wanted the world to see in June of 1941 is that there were 100,000 black people in Washington demanding that they be treated with some kind of respect and human dignity. And so Roosevelt called Randolph to the White House and met with Randolph. Randolph had previously said, one thing is certain, that is that if the Negroes are going to get anything out of this national defense, we must fight for it and fight with the gloves off for abolition of Jim Crow in the armed forces, against discrimination in jobs, the March on Washington movement. Roosevelt called A. Philip Randolph to the White House and at first tried to cajole Randolph into calling the march off. This would be bad for the United States, it would be bad for the image of the United States. A. Philip Randolph said, you're not going to give me anything, I'm not going to give you anything. And so Roosevelt wound up offering, in Executive Order 8802, a Federal Fair Employment Practices Commission, which barred discrimination in the defense industry and established a commission to which appeals concerning discrimination could be raised. And so the reason you have this poster is because A. Philip Randolph led a movement which demanded that the defense industries in the United States hire people on a non-discriminatory basis, and had the leverage and had the strength, the black community had the leverage and the strength to force Roosevelt to accept that a demand. The result of that was that black populations skyrocketed in industrial areas of the United States. Black communities sprung up in Oakland and Richmond and Vallejo to work in the shipyards that would produce one Liberty ship per day during the height of the war years. These were jobs that were good jobs, welders, skilled, highly skilled jobs. Detroit's black population grew by 50,000 between 1940 and 43. Again, good, high-paying jobs. Now you have a mass of black people in skilled labor positions in major urban centers of the United States, getting, as I say, good pay and highly skilled jobs. And these people are not likely to go back to the way things were before the war, when the war ends. All right, I have one more area wherein the black population of the United States it fundamentally gets changed by World War II. And that, again, is the urbanization and northern migration of black people. Black urban population increased from 3.3 million blacks in 1930 to 4.9 million black people in 1950. So it grew about 1.5 million people during those 20 years. During the 1940s, 1.6 million black people left the South. followed again by another 1.5 million black people during the 1950s. The result of this was that, again, black political militancy increased during the war years. You had the creation of larger and larger black church communities, black church being the single institution within the black community controlled wholly by black people. And beginning to advocate for the rights of black people. But the most important thing is this, is that this black population situated in large urban areas in northern states, in highly populated northern states, had the potential of swinging the vote, national votes, presidential votes, from Democrat to Republican, or Republican to Democrat. As early as 1948, Harry Truman's chief advisor, a man named Clark Clifford, looking at the actual statistics of the number of electoral votes needed to win an election, determined that Truman could win the presidential election of 1948 should he actively solicit the black vote in these northern urban areas. And the result was twofold. For the first time, the Democratic Party, remember, is what? The Democratic Party is the party of segregation. Historically, coming out of the Civil War and Reconstruction, the Democratic Party is the party of segregation. And yet, as we've seen with the Depression, the Democratic Party increasingly, after the New Deal, becomes also the home of the black urban populations of the North. And so in 1948, inside of this conflict, and with the understanding that black population in these northern cities could provide the crucial deciding vote in terms of a presidential election, in 1948 the Democratic Party, for the first time, offers a civil rights plank in its platform. And when it does that, many of the Dixiecrats, the Southern white Democrats, for the first time, it's not going to be the last time, they will return, but for the first time, the Dixiecrats leave the Democratic Party. And this is the year that Strom Thurmond, who I mentioned, runs for president on the states' rights plan. But in any case, Truman commits himself to appeal to this black vote. This black vote has a potentially decisive character in 16 non-Southern states. These 16 non-Southern states have 278 electoral votes, and 278 is more than enough to become elected president of the United States. 3 days before the presidential election, Harry Truman, who's from Missouri, a southern state, Harry Truman holds a campaign rally in Harlem, New York. First time a presidential candidate has traveled to Harlem. 65,000 people show up. The election is so close that some newspapers predict that Truman's Republican opponent, Thomas Dewey, will beat Truman in the presidential election. And here's a Chicago newspaper on the morning of the election, having printed their newspaper already saying that Dewey had won. But in fact, because of the black vote, it is Truman who wins the presidential election. A tremendous amount of political power has shifted into the hands of black people as a result of World War II. And that political power is going to continue to play itself out in the years after World War II in terms of the civil rights movement, which we will talk about more in coming days. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've learned something from this discussion of how World War II affected black people, and I will be with you again in a subsequent lecture. Thank you.